My name is Mark Duggin, and I'm here with Bob Mumford, and we're just working a few days together here in North Carolina. And during our discussion last night, we just started going across a few themes that we've talked about quite a bit over the last few years, and they really just seem to have some life in them. We just thought we'd hop on here and just share a few things together and hope they bring some life to you. So the three kind of ideas, and I'll post links for these in the description. So if you want to explore these some more, you can, dig into them a little more. But the three themes that Bob kind of worked on, and these are from things you did 15 years ago.
Yes.
But they really seem to be applicable and pertinent to, for any time, but it really seems to be helpful maybe right now. But these three themes, the titles of these are Inconveniently Enlightened, Giving and Receiving Offense, and The Gang of Ugly Facts. So we're just going to have some discussion around these for a few minutes and kind of see where it takes us. We have got a few notes, so we hopefully don't get too distracted, but we just want to share some conversation and hope that you kind of join us in that. So if we start with this first theme called Inconveniently Enlightened, and these titles are fairly self-evident. I mean, you've got something here, and it really seems to kind of guide us. But one of the observations that you opened this particular idea was that truth is almost always negative in its first appearance.
Yes. What the idea of the Lord moving us from our present illusion to truth itself, allows us to understand that every time truth comes, it's disturbing, and you find yourself saying, "Why now? What's this? I wish he could have done that last week." But see, in my illusion, I have to recognize that when he speaks reality, it will disturb, injure, offend, put me into some kind of a mental state of saying, because I am now being transformed. I am going from where I'm at to where he wants me to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think even the title alone, the enlightened piece, so it is giving you something of value.
Oh my.
It is bringing that, but the inconvenient piece is really the kicker. That's the, why now? Why is this the time that I need to, there's never a good time for a flat tire, but there are certainly times where it's worse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And see, for a person to have been involved religiously all his life and suddenly recognize he never really encountered the Lord himself, how inconvenient can that be? But it happens all the time, and then you think, I wish I would have known that 20 years, 10 years earlier.
Sure. Well, one of the statements that you make in in this teaching was, when truth comes, it doesn't tell us often what we want to hear, and it doesn't agree with things that we're sure that we already know. And I think, that would maybe more immediately resonate with our ideas or preconceptions that we would have of this. But something that we've talked a lot about, especially at Life Changers, for at least 20 years since I've been around, and probably longer, was that truth is a person. And when we say that, it's the person of Christ. Can you open that a little bit? What does that look like?
I don't want to try to lecture anything here, but the nature of the New Testament is for Christ to return us to be human as God intended. Now, that's missing in most people. Everybody's set on Christ came to take me to heaven. It's not accurate, I'm telling you, it is not. The first prayer Jesus teaches, let Father's will be done on earth.
Sure.
So for him to transform me from who I am, what I am, to what he wants to be is instructive, it's compelling. I don't always want to do it. And so when I say it's negative in its first appearance, but then the freedom that Father is taking me towards depends on a proper response in my person.
Well, and I think some of that really leads us to the next thought I had written down was discernment. So if to develop that, and another thing that we often talk about is these things are skills. So when we bring up these concepts, oftentimes it's like, well, that's a skill. You've got to, you cultivate that, you develop it. And I think with the discernment piece, our ability to look at a thing that's uncomfortable, a thing that doesn't agree with the concepts or the way that we've understood the world, and to develop that in some kind of meaningful way. I think how do we move into that space of loving truth in that way that we can use discernment to see that?
If you would take my answer, Mark, and it's not my answer, it's the biblical answer. I'm trying to keep these succinct and short, not Bible teaching. What about this event that I don't understand? This event is happening now. What about this that I don't understand? And see, the moment I do that, my person opens for an understanding of the event that isn't obvious on the spot. It just is not obvious.
Sure.
So if we could ask ourselves, all right, what is it about this? What about this happening that I don't understand right now? And if I do that, honestly, I want to testify much quicker, much clearer. I think, now I understand what was going on, and I could tell war stories here.
Yes.
But what about what is happening now that I don't understand?
Sure.
You know?
I mean,
And the moment, that's what I was after, is for us to say to myself, what about this? So it's an argument with my wife, it's a thing with my son, it's a thing that's going on in the community, political, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What about this? And so if I ask, I'll ask with the sense of wanting to know. See?
Right.
If I ask,
not just to give your own answer. That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really helpful as we kind of look at the idea of offense.
Yes.
Because often that can lead us into offense or keep us away from offense. And when we were talking about, just in conversation last night over dinner, the idea of offense seems to kind of permeate culturally where we are. And it's not just a Western phenomenon. It seems to be kind of a worldwide phenomenon. Offense walked out. It leads us to, to really be cruel and unkind to our fellow human beings in some kind of way that just isn't natural. And so when we talked about offense last night, one of the things that you observed was offense causes us to say no. It leads us to the no. And then when we were in discussion last night, you brought up something about judging.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really, really helpful and interesting piece. If you could just share that for a quick second, I feel like, those that listen to this might be really blessed by it.
When I was in the Navy, they had an officer, actually an executive officer of the ship, and he gained the name Bino because he started every conversation, everything he started with no, and see, there's a predisposition. No is self-protective and non-involvement. So I start by protecting myself. In Matthew 7, he talks about don't judge. And we have really misunderstood that. And when just fairly recently, I was given an insight to this that really, really helped me, which was what Jesus is saying in Matthew 7, don't judge. Don't start with the word no. If you start with the word yes, then you can discern and understand the time to withdraw or the time to reinterpret or so. But see, when you say no to everything, it's almost impossible to return to yes. So I become an increasingly negative person without even being aware of it. So would you like to do a picnic?
No.
No. You want to go to the movies? No. And so honestly, it's so painful to watch it happen. And all of us have there's a propensity, man. I'm telling you. And so for us to be able to say, give me time to think of it, let me think it through. So rather than no to everything, because transformation, becoming human, means that I have to leave my illusion and enter a sphere that I'm unfamiliar with.
Well, and leaving illusion, going back to that piece of not saying no, I mean, then ego comes into play, self-preservation comes into play, and all of those things, if we're willing to let those things die, can move us into a place of honoring something of loving our neighbor, honoring something of Christ ask of us in the earth, of how we navigate these really difficult, potentially offensive situations.
Yes.
The things that are hard to discern upon their initial observation if they're truth.
Well, see, it reduces to, we did the 7 giants, remember that thing we did? And the middle giant was control. And honestly, the no is a form of control. If I say no, I remain in control.
Sure.
If I say yes, it demands something of me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I've got to go to the movies or do the picnic or
well, it makes you vulnerable to
That's right.
someone else's speaking something into your life.
Inconvenient. It costs me. There's a price to pay, and I've met people. I have done it myself. I mean,
well, join the club, right?
Oh my God!
This is
So my wife would say, "Well, Mr. No has come home," and we laugh over it and it takes, honestly, first of all, it takes some kind of introduction to this thing like we're doing, because I didn't see myself as always saying no. Then when I saw it, I had to laugh because I would say no and then hear it. It's the first time I heard myself, and I burst out laughing, and I thought, oh my goodness. So then I started saying yes recklessly.
right.
So I could break out of that thing, and it was not fun. But it's a life skill.
Sure.
I'm telling you, it's no.
Back to the skill, back to the idea that you cultivate this.
Yeah, it's a life skill. I'm telling you, and still once in a while I still do it, and my Judith and I, we laugh over this. We've been married 66 years, by the way, so you know what I'm talking about as far as inconveniences. Say, and do you want to go to this restaurant? Do you want to go to this restaurant? And I'd say, whatever, I'm here to serve you. Whatever restaurant you want to go to, it's my joy. Mm-hmm. You can't fake it.
True.
And And my yielding to the restaurant of her choice brings joy, heals the evening, makes the thing go. My no, right?
Starts off with some difficulty.
That's right.
Well, I mean, so I think that really, one of the things that really impacted me when I was thinking about this and, looking through this material that kind of seemed to be alive was if you are given to offense, if you take that on, you one of the things you observe is that you're likely to start collecting them and entering to that much more easily than the first one.
May I just address the offense thing for a moment?
Sure.
In Matthew, Jesus says to the disciples, "Please don't let anything I do offend you." Mark, when that opened, I'm telling you, offense is more frightening than anybody knows. Old Testament says a person offended is harder to be won than a walled city, because my offense, I'm offended at the Jews, I'm offended at race, I'm offended at finances. So once the offense takes hold, it's a prison, nothing less than a prison.
Sure.
And so then I become increasingly a negative person. Almost takes us back to the no things, because
Well, that's the last two observations that I jotted down was, in addition to collecting the offenses, that you take on a generally negative perception of life, and then you enter a cycle of cynicism.
More than anybody knows, and the new birth and the person of Christ. The Lord in this uses mysteries for me to be able to take adventure into a sphere that I don't know. That's a skill.
It is.
See? And so my offense is a protective mechanism. But then I own the offense, and I find myself in a unbelievably strong prison, and my offense towards anybody, anything, anyone, towards God, towards the Bible, towards people, towards religion, he's offended. I was dealing with a man, and he said to me, "Do you know what money is?" And he pulls out this big roll of bills, and I thought, what in the world is he talking about? But then the more I could feel and sense the offense somewhere in his childhood. The offense disturbed his whole understanding of money, finance, how life works, and he was trapped in this. And I was grieved. I wish I could have helped him, but I just grieved, because the offense is about anything, anyone, anywhere, at any time.
Well, and I think a theme that you have and Life Changers has stewarded for many, many years at this point has been agape.
Yes.
And how we see that invading our space, how we understand, how we interact with that. And I think that when we look at the idea of offense, and do you have any thoughts about how agape then speaks to offense or prevents us from going around and collecting it and then winding up in that place of just constant cynicism?
I marked that. Seriously, that is the key. That is the pivotal thing. You cannot walk in agape without it costing.
Sure.
See, agape is self-sacrificial love. And when I am a no person, I am an offended person, I simply cannot do it. I want to, but I don't do it. So when I am being cultivated by kingdom, by Christ, into an agape person, meaning I am loving without return, then it requires, I don't want to go too deep here, but it requires my surrender of personal sovereignty.
Which that's a big ask. That's a big ask.
Are you kidding? That's the one that's saying no.
Sure. It keeps the walls up. It keeps everything just
self-protected,
right?
Defended,
right.
Safe. Thank you, man. That's
Well, I think that the final thing we're going to look at here is the theme that you worked on called the Gang of Ugly Facts. And it really goes hand in hand with the offense and with inconveniently enlightened. So oftentimes this inconvenient enlightenment isn't something we feel is positive, at least at first appearance, but it really is something that we have real difficulty trying to engage or find a way through with. And you called that a gang of ugly facts. And I think that as those realities kind of find their way into our lives, our ability to engage with that reality and not live in illusion. I mean, you alluded to that earlier, but to not live in illusion seems like a really, I don't know, that's a really difficult one, to not do whatever your bias defaults to and your personal experience lends itself to, and find real truth that's outside of your personal experiences, your feelings. All of those things are certainly involved in this space of this gang of ugly facts showing up at your door.
Oh man, the gang of ugly. That's a phrase. I don't know. I don't think it was original with me. I don't know where I got it, but the gang of ugly facts is Father's determination to break me out of my illusion. I was given the illusion, I formed it, I believe it, but it's not true. So consequently, that's some form of prison. Father is determined to bring me to freedom. Therefore, don't let anything I do offend you. Of course, what is he going to do? He's going to let so my theory is really captured me. But my theory is not only inadequate, it's essentially wrong. So I go to school, there's the teacher. I go to seminary, there's the professor. I go to the Lord and I find him saying a series of events that I can escape, confront me, asking, demanding, requiring me to yield.
Sure.
And if I don't yield, I remain. The gang of ugly facts are dismissed, and I remain in my illusion.
Well, and I think that brings us back to what we opened at the beginning, and then seems to really come around full circle now of, if we cultivate the skill of being able to see through and not look at on the surface.
Yes.
And I think one of the great illustrations that we've talked about many times, and the implications of how it so affected how we ended up here today, was Martin Luther, and how he, had to face a lot of these things. Well, I mean, if you could talk about that just a second, about what he experienced, or maybe some of the application that you might see with this idea of gang of ugly facts and what he had to come to face reality with.
Well, for me, Martin Luther was one of the bravest men I know in trying to learn how to stand in truth. But when Martin Luther was trying to stand in truth, he was facing the Roman Catholic Church, which was a monolith. So for us, we're facing all kinds of stuff, but they're not as strong as that. So, Martin, did you write these? Yes. And so I'm not trying to be Protestant or Catholic here. What I'm trying to do is say the strength of what we're confronted with is usually in direct proportion to the depth of our love for Christ. So this is, if I say this is going to cost me.
Yes. Yes.
So then, the famous statement, Luther says, may God have mercy on my soul, but yes, these are my books. I cannot deny what I have written. And then all kinds of things follow. See? So his ability to hold to what we would understand as the truth as Christ was revealing it.
Sure.
See, that was his heart, and think of how it transformed the earth, positive and negative. It wasn't all, but for us to, and see, that is what is for your family, for our business, for our humanity, and see the falsity, half-truth, maneuvering, manipulation.
Sure.
See, for us to surrender all of that and say, no, it was, I had a strong German, really at the point, I was 16, and I was working for this boss, and he was really a factual man. He had that German Martin Luther excellence, you know, and he would say to me, don't make excuses, make it right. And honestly, I think this is part of what has helped me, you know, identify some of this and deal with it, so that we would be able to walk with it because could I make a statement here for our listeners? And it's not obvious, but if you think about it, the nature of the kingdom is to increase human responsibility.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I feel like that really, the last thing I had noted here was what we talked about out of Romans 8.
Yeah.
About God using all things.
All things.
And so I feel like that, I mean, that's a really nice way to kind of tie this up with increasing our ability to discern and take on that human responsibility and really embrace the reality as it is and not camp out in illusion and embrace the ugly facts and not get stuck in offense. I mean, all of these things are really beautifully tied together, and I feel like the things you've opened up and shared with us can really, if we can onboard some of these and put them into practice.
And teach our children.
Yes.
Why were you late, Bob? Why were you late, Bob? Because I didn't start soon enough.
That's the factual answer you can get. That's it.
So this boss I had, and see why? So I don't know. Well, let's do it. He put a timer in the cigarette machine, and I was opening the station, and so he would say to me, what time did you open the station this morning? And I didn't know he had the timer in there.
Right.
So I'd say, I'm supposed to open at 7. And at 7 o'clock, I said about 10 after 7. And about, maybe about 2 months or so, he started to trust me, because I would say, instead of lying, I'd say 7:15. I didn't get here till 7:30, and I was really embarrassed. And so the object being, he is cultivating in me It was a gift, Mark. It was a gift.
Sure.
And it served me the rest of my life, because my physical family was a disaster, and mom and dad divorced, but he was calling me up to manhood, humanity, integrity, and the phrase that I used a moment ago. Please understand, the Lord Jesus really does want us to increase our responsibility. The general speaking to, I don't think it was Harvard, but one of the Ivy League,
right.
He said, if you really want to change the world, start by making your bed.
Make your bed. Make your bed.
And that sounds so silly, but it's being lost totally with our young people, with our families, with our businesses, with even church, even the way we present truth is if there's an integrity factor that we're reaching for, that really does matter.
It does. It does. All right, well, we're going to leave that here. We're going to kind of wind this up, and so if you're interested in tracking with us a little more on these, we'll have the links to these resources just below, and we'll continue this conversation and kind of see where it takes us.